how it's going to be tonight. I think everybody's watching basketball probably, but we are live.
Basketball.
It's the Final Four games are tonight there, Jeff Solomon.
Are they? No one pays attention to that stuff. Hey, Jeff McKinney.
They're not in here because they think Solomon's off making spicy pickle beer.
How far did San Jose State get this year?
Did they make it in? I don't even know if
maybe they made the NIT. Sometimes they do that.
They could have. All right. So it looks like we got a handful of people watching. Really? Do you guys want to
Hey, lurkers, leave a comment right now. And how about you like the stream? I like your stream. Like my stream.
I have to say, like, I have been dying to get into this all day.
I'm not the president.
I've just been sitting here like this all day, just smelling it.
Have any of you tried it before? Like, is this going to be like a real first time for some of you? Or
it won't be my real first time, but I've got a story about that.
Oh, good. Well, we just lost 15 minutes of airtime. So. All right. Make sure I've got everything where
and we've been demonetized. Thanks.
All right.
Are we titling this episode John's first time?
We may. Quick check. Make sure you guys see. Can you guys hear this?
Yeah.
Yes. All right. Cool. I think I finally got that part.
So much stuff here.
I know.
Dude,
right?
Look at So I have a collection of these shot glasses right here. Can you see that?
Yep.
Those were for my bachelor party. Yeah, my buddy G-Rap made those.
Nice. Hey, Laura, thanks for joining us.
Hi, Laura.
Hi, Laura.
All right. I can't think of anything else. Can you guys?
I was supposed to think.
No. All right. I think that means we're good to go. Yeah. All
yeah.
Right. See you guys on the other side.
It's a little early. It's like 3 minutes early.
Is it?
On mine.
Wait, we're never ready to go on time.
I got my iPhone, which is official, says we still have 1 more minute.
Oh.
Hi, Lori.
Hi, Lori.
What time is it in Bakersfield right now?
JVB and Rhett drop in. They're just going to be shocked.
What do you think of the red there? Oh, and Lori's with us. Hey, Lori.
Yeah, Lori says 1 minute.
1 minute, right?
She didn't even grab onto my Bakersfield joke. I thought that was some fucking high quality, like next level shit right there.
Legit stuff. I have so much booze sitting here right now.
Really? Oh, you know what? With all the stuff we've been getting lately, I have to thin the herd. We're coming up to see Patrick and Kathleen this weekend, and we have to talk about that, Eccles.
Okay.
I gotta empty out the liquor cabinet a little bit to fit some more stuff in.
No, I do too.
I did do the same. I was rearranging, and I'm like, some things just went further back in the shelf. Nothing gets poured out. Just some things go way further back.
Well, I got the 2 bottles of vodka from Olympia, so one of them's going up to Colorado this weekend.
Oh, that's right.
Oh, dude, Kara killed the Olympia. She loved it.
All right, can we officially start now, Jeff Solomon?
Yeah.
Hold on.
Ask our.
Hey, everybody.
He's just sipping coffee. He's like, "Is this over yet?" Like,
Lori,
peanut gallery.
You can see her comment is time stamped. It says 7:30.
Okay,
so
we can go.
Yeah, I guess.
All right. Thanks.
I am always ready.
At the sound of the tone, the official "We Like Drinking" time will be 5 o'clock. Commence consumption.
This week on episode 323 of the We Like Drinking podcast, we'll be discussing Jeff is quizzing, John is fuming, and the coffee is a brewing with Tom Baker of Mr. Black Cold Brew Coffee Liqueur. So crack open that beer, uncork that wine, and let's Get drinking.
I feel so embarrassed. I'm wearing the same shirt now that you see in one of my pictures in the intro. Like I'm so sorry.
Have you watched it since then?
No.
Well done, Jeff.
I just use it as a napkin on our other shows.
Sounds about right. So let me say cheers, my podcast drinking friends, and welcome to Happy Hour 323 of your favorite award-winning topical beer and wine education podcast focusing on fun. Fun. We like to have it, so make sure you never miss another episode of our brand of drinking fun by visiting welikeDrinking.com/subscribe.
Subscribe. Right. Sorry.
So as you can tell, we're all a little amped up. There may be some caffeine pumping through our veins. So let's find out why and see who we're drinking with tonight. We've got our usual panel members. Are joined by our California Sustainable Wine Growing Ambassador and recovering wine blogger, Jeff Solomon.
Hey, shalom, everyone.
Our commercial brewer and snake wrangler, John Ruyak.
Hello.
And I am your host and certified specialist of wine, Jeff Eccles. Now, our guest this week is the managing founder and creative director for Mr. Black Spirits, producer of Mr. Black Cold Brew Coffee Liqueur. He is a designer turned coffee snob who, along with his founding partner, were united by a love of fine coffee and good drinking. They joined forces to bring the craft, integrity, and caffeine of specialty coffee to the night. Please help us welcome Tom Baker. Welcome to the show, Tom.
Thank you very much. Very kind.
Thank you so much. So excited to have you here. I'm just going to put this bottle up for everybody to see because we're going to talk about this most beautiful bottle a lot, along with the ingredients inside it. But if you can't wait, folks, you can find more about Mr. Black by visiting the website, mrblack.co, and follow them on Instagram at Mr. Black Spirits. Oh, my goodness. All right. We have a lot to get through with this one, guys. Tom, welcome to the show. Coming to us from sunny Down Under, I understand.
Sydney, Australia.
Excellent. Beautiful area. Good coffee.
Excellent coffee. Some people say coffee in Melbourne is better than Sydney, but they're wrong.
Coffee is kind of a thing to us Australians.
It is. It's sort of this, like Russell Crowe, the actor, and Crowded House, things we steal from other countries and pretend we invented them. Coffee is definitely not Australian by origin, but we feel like it's ours. We're keeping it.
Excellent. So I think what we're going to do is we are going to taste a little bit just neat because I have a lot of people. What's that?
Just try it. I think it does so much the heavy lifting. Once you know what we make, it makes sort of everything else a bit more easy to understand. So have a taste. I'm serious.
Yeah, so I think we're going to pour up a little bit of this because I'm sure when a lot of people hear coffee liqueur, I know the first thing that comes into my head is like Kahlua. And it's just like, you verp a little bit when you hear that name because you're just waiting for this overly sweet, candified coffee syrup. But I got to tell you, I smelled this a little while ago. And this, honestly, my wife said it smells like tiramisu.
Yep.
I think it smells it's like strong black coffee with a little bit of like a cream or a little bit of sweet to it is what it smells like.
For real, it just on the nose, and this has not touched my lips yet. I just cracked the seal right before the show. On the nose, it reminds me of similar to what you're saying, Jeff Eccles. It reminds me of like I used to love eating coffee ice cream when I was younger, and I just remember that smell when you would open that up.
I had some earlier today. I got a notice from UPS that it would be delivered by 8 a.m. at the brewery. And I'm like, oh, shoot, I got to get out the door. And I'm driving down the road. And I get to where I turn left to go into the brewery. And I see a UPS express van turning right coming up the other way. I'm like, woo, made it. So I sent these guys a picture saying it got there in time. And the lady who dropped it off for me, she's like, you're very excited about this. Is what's in here? I said, well, you're not asking for my signature, so I'm not going to tell you. Oh, it's alcohol, isn't it? I didn't know. Right. So I go inside the brewery. I open up the box. I stick it on one of the tables out in the serving area. All of a sudden, Dan, the owner, comes in, and my 2 assistant brewers come in. They're like, "Oh, ho, 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 what do we have here?" So I had to pour them all a little taste this morning. And what do you think, guys? It's special.
It's this beautiful, like condensed, like just deep roasty coffee flavor. I don't want to throw anybody off when I say like it's got this syrupy viscosity, but this is not like cloyingly sweet. This is like essence of coffee. You know what I mean? Like almost when you brew the coffee like super strong and just boil it down to like a syrup. Like it's like that, but just in the most delicious way. This is just neat. Like this is fantastic. I can't wait to put this on the rocks and mix this together with some delicious Four Roses single barrel bourbon.
So it's like almost like Demitasse, with the good stuff added in.
Yeah, I mean, you guys are nailing it. Like it's a strong cup of coffee, and there's just maybe some cream, maybe a little bit of cream in it, like a sweet cream or something like that in it. This is just delicious by itself.
Yeah, well, we'll get to it.
So while we're salivating and fawning all over this, Tom, what can you tell us? Like, obviously there is a lot of craft that went into this. Can you give us a little bit of what goes into making this fine bottle of liqueur?
For sure, guys. And look, the reaction you're having and the reaction that people have when they try Mr. Black is the reason why the company exists in the first place. My business partner is just, just the most fastidious, detail-oriented guy, and spent literally 9 months and 240 different iterations, to make this liquid. And just the reaction that people have when they try it is that pure, unabated joy on their face. Like, this is all my love of coffee and good times and late nights all in one beautiful cup of booze, and we get that in the liquid. We don't even have to say anything. And that really, that's why it exists, because it just, when people try it, it just elicits this, flavor sensation that transcends emotion. It's so good.
My cheeks are hurting by smiling. I'm smiling so much just thinking about
the first we got was in the newspaper back when they used to print newspapers, and it said 8 years ago, right? It just said, wow. That was the tasting notes, was just wow. Something like, I hope you're holding onto the bar when you try this, but it's just genuinely, like this whole business, this whole company just started from, what we just view as this wow liquid, that really sums up, a culture of innovation in coffee in Australia over the last, since the 50s really, which is 70 years ago. But, like a history of innovation in coffee and stories of migration from Italy and from Greece to Australia. It's all of Australia's coffee and drinking culture wrapped up in one beautiful little mouthful of booze. So that's why we started making it.
I just the one thing I would say is, I was talking to my wife right after we ate dinner. She's like, I want to try that. And we're going up to Colorado Springs to visit my son, and I'm kind of thinning out my liquor cabinet to make room for all the stuff we get for the show. And so my wife's like, you're going to take this and this and this, but you're not taking that.
That one stays. Yeah. And it's just wonderfully Moorish as well, isn't it? Like, you just want to go in for that second, third, fourth sip. I mean, you could, obviously I have a vested interest in this thing, but I just love it. I just think it's the bee's knees. It's so delicious. And each time you sort of drink it, you kind of, a little bit of you feels like you're trying it for the first time. I can still, every time, it just reminds me of having coffee at home with my mom when I was 9, walking into the distillery, where I met my business partner for the first time. All of these memories come flooding back when you drink it. I think it's a truly remarkable thing. But sorry, you asked how we make it, right? Coffee, booze, water, sugar, right? 4 ingredients. It's the same ingredients that go into most cups of coffee, maybe with a bit of whiskey that people drink. Coffee, booze, water, sugar. It sounds really simple to make. Like, we make a very, very concentrated cold brew, which Jeff answers your viscosity point. It's a very rich, well-balanced, but quite dense and oily, if you like, sort of brew of coffee. But we make a very concentrated, complex cold brew coffee, and then add, grain-based ethanol and a touch of sugar too. So the actual process of describing it to someone, really simple. The actual process of making, 500,000 bottles a year of beautifully consistent, award-winning, direct trade, roasted and distilled in-house product is like remarkably complex, So yeah, it's a beast. But we have the benefit of only making one thing. We just make Mr. Black, and it means we can get it tasting as good as it does.
This is great. You're just talking a little bit about like coffee culture, and you had mentioned Italy. And as you were saying that, in my mind, I'm having this vision of being in Italy, being served some Vinsanto and some biscotti, and just dipping that in the Vinsanto. It's like, I kind of want to pass the Vinsanto to the left and get some of this Mr. Black and just go to town with like a dope local biscotti. I think that'd be awesome. Oh, wow.
It's just it's what I love about coffee. We always said this I asked my business partner, like a couple of years after we started, like, why are we doing this? Why is it working? Like, why are we all here? Apart from just making booze. And he was like, well, I really wanted to make Mr. Black, because he's like, coffee has a culture to it. You ask people their earliest memory of Juniper, it's a pretty short conversation, right? But and don't get me wrong, love gin and all that. But coffee. You ask people what's your earliest memory of coffee, and they'll tell you about sitting around the dining table with their nonna giving them taste. They'll tell you about after church having pancakes. They'll tell you about not liking as a kid but getting on it in college. All these types, it means something to people, and I think that's what we can tap into at Mr. Black. Not just the nerd stuff in the innovation and the actual what happens in the bean that makes Mr. Black taste the way it does, but there's a sort of broader social context of coffee, which we love and we're very fortunate to be a part of.
Yes, that's amazing. So everybody's mixing drinks now. So Tom, are you partaking, or are you just having actual?
No, I am. I'm drinking a single origin Mr. Black that we make because it was behind me and it was open already. So we make with a very special coffee from Ergotep in Ethiopia. And Yolo, I'm the boss, so I get to drink what I want. But yeah, this is our single origin. and you absolutely stuff.
You show something pretty cool there, because we're holding the bottle up for the people watching, and it's black, but you can see the glass is clear. And on the back, there's a whole lot of stuff that's there that you just can't see until you start draining the bottle.
Yeah,
a little bit, as they say.
A visual trick that we did when we started. I was the designer. I think you said the intro before we started Mr. Black. So it's just one of those. I know the premise of the company was just about making beautiful things. Both obviously the liquid and the pack, and it's just. I mean, I know everyone thinks their kids are good looking, but I mean, it's such a beautiful.
It is a sex. I mean, I gotta say, it is a sexy bottle. It is really a sexy bottle. So let's find out what everybody else is making. I'm going to go first because I went and got myself some espresso, and I am having an espresso martini that I just shook up here. Typically an espresso martini, you're going to have your coffee liqueur, probably some additional sugar, simple syrup. You're going to have the coffee, and then you're going to have vodka or something like that. I'm going with the Mr. Black version, which is just Mr. Black and espresso. 2 parts Mr. Black, 1 part espresso, shaken over ice to get it nice and frothy, and poured in a glass. And that's it.
That's a good looking drink. For what it's worth.
Yes, it is. John, what are you having?
So I'm having a cold fashion, and I went out and bought some orange bitters on the way home, and the other whiskey in my cold fashion is the New Riff Kentucky Rye that we had those folks on the show about 2 years ago now.
That is.
Haven't they done well?
Yes, they have. And that is what I'm making after I finish this one. So, Jeff Solomon, how about you?
I am having the poor man's cold fashioned. I am doing 1 parts Mr. Black and 1 parts Four Roses single barrel Kentucky straight bourbon whiskey, given to me personally from Mr. Al Young, rest in peace. And yeah, sorry, didn't bring the orange bitters, y'all. But I do have a nice crystal glass, the kind that you steal from your grandma. And I got to tell you, this is just, it's so beautiful because look, Tom, I didn't realize I could fall more in love with a product just hearing the beauty and the simplicity behind it. When you're talking about, it's just coffee and booze and sugar, and it's there's all these notes that we're getting from it. Folks who are super into coffee, folks who are super into wine. There's a lot of that too, where it's you're describing all these things that you taste, but yeah, it's great, and
the actual process of making Mr. Black borrows a lot of technology and is far more akin to winemaking than it is to brewing or distilling. Our head of coffee is a former winemaker. He worked in a wine region north of Sydney for over 10 years, both as a winemaker in QA. It's incredibly analytical, science-driven, evidence-based process to make Mr. Black. Coffee is incredibly oxygen sensitive, incredibly temperature sensitive, far more akin to winemaking than brewing or distilling. So while we are distillers, we're also winemakers as well as coffee roasters. So it's that sort of broad skill set you need.
I totally see that. And then it's with a high rye bourbon, adding this spiciness to go in with that. Eccles so astutely talked about this creamy type of backbone that he was sensing there. And I think this all comes together. It's it's like the rug from The Big Lebowski. You know what I mean? It's just
the other thing is, I don't know if you guys got it yet, but we have another guest coming on, and he sent a bottle of bourbon cream.
Yeah.
Ooh. And I'm kind of jonesing to give that a shot too.
So John, I'm really interested though to hear how your cold fashion is with a little bit of those orange bitters, because I bet that wakes things up a whole
little
lot.
bit. What I'm getting is when I drink it, the first thing I taste is the rye. And then the Mr. Black kind of wraps itself around it, and then the orange bitters are kind of an afternote to that, and I do have a twist of orange rind in the glass as well. So the orange comes back just at the very end. So you get the spiciness of the rye, and then the Mr. Black just kind of smooth that over, and then orange and coffee or orange and chocolate are it's just one of the most killer combinations on the planet, right?
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I love the associative flavor link there as well. A lot of people, if you put orange in Mr. Black and let them try it, they go, "Oh, is this chocolate flavored?" It's just they're all on that same part of the flavor wheel, and that's why obviously with either high rye bourbons or pure rye, you get that sort of chocolatey, spice, orangey coffee thing, which is I think just this complex, delicious, lovely thing to eat or drink. And if you didn't know what was in it, you'd probably have a hard time breaking it down into its parts. I love it. I think it's great.
This is kind of like a dark orange chocolate cordial candy.
Yeah. And I got to say, the Espresso Martini, have you heard the story of where the Espresso Martini came from, the origin story of it? There was a model, apparently to be unnamed, that went into a bar and asked the bartender for something that was going to wake her up and then fuck her up. And it built the Espresso Martini from that. Now this one, that's not, and that's the good thing about this one, is it won't do that, because this is this is so stupid good. It's because there's no kick from the alcohol because there's no vodka in it. So it's this creamy, it's this just it kind of takes a little bit of that sweet edge off the Mr. Black by itself and adds a little bit more of the coffee. So it kind of like thins it out and ramps it up a little bit. But it's like, it's like drinking water, but it's really, really good. So this is delicious. Like,
the actual context of that, like Wake Me Up and Fuck Me Up story with Dick Bradsell in London, is like, they had a coffee machine in this bar. Like, this isn't like the UK was not famous for its coffee or its food,
right?
In the 80s, right?
Yeah.
It's like effectively it's a Black Russian shaken with a shot of espresso, right?
Yep.
So like, the context of obviously Dick Bradsell, famous bartender. But having an espresso machine in the 80s in London was sort of a bit novel as well. And the coffee station being in the bar station, which again wasn't common in restaurants at the time. So it's a one of those great Lord origin stories that I think I've told about as many times as Mr. Black.
Awesome. So we're going to keep drinking these. We're going to get on to the rest of our drinks, but you guys don't want to watch and just sit and watch us drink the whole time. You guys want to see the rest of the show. So let's get to
wine, beer, spirit, or pop culture reference. This is where I'm going to give our distinguished panel of guests. Okay, there's one distinguished guest and then a couple of locals that won't leave. I'm going to give them a term, and they need to tell me and everybody who's watching live at welikedrinking.com/show, as they ought to do every Tuesday night at 7:30 Pacific-ish. I want to know, do you think this is a wine term, a beer term, a spirit term, or some sort of pop culture reference? The term this week is Dimmick. Is Dimmick a wine, beer, spirit, or pop culture reference? John Ruyak, what say you?
I'm going to say Dimmick is a pop culture reference, and it has to do with like a gimmick for people who are too unintelligent to figure out what a gimmick is. Therefore, they're dim, and it's a dimmick.
John Ruyak says that this is a pop culture reference referencing people that are too dim to know what a gimmick is. I'm waiting to see what the chatter boxes in the comments are saying.
While we're waiting, Jeff Solomon, could you spell it for us?
Oh, certainly. DIMMICK.
Exactly.
Meanwhile, Eccles is typing this into his computer, which is totally against the rules.
I'm putting it in the show notes, Jeff Solomon.
Oh, okay, sure.
Because you guys never put it in the show notes like I ask you to.
Tom Baker of Mr. Black, could you let us know what Dimmick is?
I'm not going to lie. I don't know. So I'm going to take a stab here. I think we're going to go, it is a unit of measurement in beer.
Okay. So Tom Baker is saying that
how many Dimmicks would you like this beer to be? And then John goes, guys, this beer is going to be 4 Dimmicks, please. At least.
Wow. So it's like so you're not necessarily saying it's a unit of volume, like this might be a unit of strength?
No, it's a unit of how many dim brewers it takes to...
I like that, okay.
You need at least 4 halfwits to make this beer, or else it's not going in the can.
Okay.
Right,
wow. Okay. The comments section, they still have no idea what to do. I think they're on a little bit of delay. They're still waiting for me to spell it. I already did that, folks. Jeff Eccles.
Yes. Everybody is so close. Everybody is so close. This is really I thought John was going to get it. But it is a pop culture reference, and it is the lesser known Danish limericks. It is the Dimmick.
Okay. Wow. Okay. Our friend
not Danish limerick culture.
yeah, we know how is that popular? Our friend Lori of Dracaena Wines, which by the way, you can get 5% off by going to welikedrinking.com/wine. Is it wine or wines?
Wine.
Get yourself some of Lori's delicious wine, 5% off with WLD at checkout. Det Neersoyed says that it's a recent Top Shot NFT that I purchased. Very cute. You know, Tom Baker's on the show, and he's got this beautiful product called
Mr. Black.
Mr. Black. And there was a movie by Quentin Tarantino, came out in 1992, called Reservoir Dogs. And you might remember that all like the main characters, they all had these different names. And while there was not a Mr. Black in Reservoir Dogs, the character of Larry Dimmick, played by Harvey Keitel, was known as Mr. White. Dimmick! It's a pop culture reference.
Drove a straight arrow on that one, Jeff Sullivan.
Yeah, really.
Yeah.
On point. That was NFT on point.
Hey, by the way, my name is Jeff is Rad on NBA Top Shot. Give me some moments, yo. Give me some moments. When packs.
Okay. Like we said, Tom, things kind of fall apart in the middle of the
I'm
show.
on the blockchain. I'm a crypto bro.
All right. So Tom, we've talked a little bit about it, but I'm interested. You were on the consultation side of alcohol, tobacco, other things.
Yeah.
Before you came over to the liquor side as a producer. So when you were making that move, did you know that you were going into the coffee liqueur market, or was it you had to do some research and take some time to figure out what it was going to be before you hit on Mr. Black?
No, completely. It's a really great question. So the warts and all truth, maybe there's a different version on the website, but genuinely, I was a designer at an agency, and we used to work on what I would call the trinity of fast food, booze and cigarettes. But a growing dissatisfaction with just the mediocrity that would get launched, these concepts and ideas and product. And this is like 10 years ago, right? But just the stuff that was coming out of the mainstream booze at the time was just over researched, watered down, inoffensive products, right? And that's really where craft boundaries in the world, right? How about we actually make products with a perspective and bring something different to the world? But I was doing that and just sort of growing increasingly frustrated with the inaction of the liquor industry. And then I walked into a distillery and never left. I met a guy who makes stuff. And if you've ever been to a brewery or a distillery where people make stuff, there's just it's this sort of this intangible quality of production that I just fell in love with. He was working on some liquids. I was a barista at college and just loved coffee. And he'd been making some things that was sort of a fair way down the road. And he said, do you like this? Do you think it's good? And I was like, I thought, this product needed to be on every bar in the world. It's that good. It deserves a spot on everyone's bar on earth. I had no idea how hard it was going to be. How hard can it be? It turns out really hard, but anyway, we'll come to that later. But I didn't even know of like the category of coffee liqueurs. There was no market research, no strategy deck, I didn't even walk into a bar and ask a bartender, and thank God I didn't, because I'm sure if you asked the bartender in Sydney, like, oh, artisanal coffee and liqueur is certainly not what they were hoping a rep walks in that day with, So, but we just made something that we thought was just stunning and we believed in. And I think it was that sort of drive and enthusiasm, and people saw that and they're like, well, look, at these guys are quitting their jobs to make coffee liquor. Maybe there is something in it. So yeah, that was there was absolutely no strategy. We didn't think that, we could take some of Kalua's market share or Tia Maria was a relic, all of which these things are now true. But, we just had something brilliant. We thought we needed to share it with the world. So that's why we made Mr.
And I got to ask, like, when you first start, when you finally got your recipe right and you started taking it out, I can't imagine what the reaction was. I imagine it was a kind of a twofold thing. When you presented to them, like, oh, I've got this new coffee liqueur, that they're just like, oh God, why? Because
is that what we're doing? Is that what craft spirits are doing now? We're through
right
now into the coffee and liqueurs. Yeah, that's what some people would think for sure.
And then the moment they taste it, I'm sure they're like, oh, okay.
I had a very like a story I tell all the time, which is, I had this meeting with a bar in London called the Blind Pig. Really, Jason Atherton, Michelin star, amazing bar. Anyway, and because before London Cocktail Week, they were trying to prep 2,000 cocktails to serve the next day. I had this meeting with him. I sat down. His name's Kyle, and he's like the bar manager. And he's like, Tom, I'm not gonna lie, I took the meeting because you're a friend of a friend, but we don't have a big back bar. Our bar program sorted, like, just to limit your expectation. I was like, you know what? Thanks for your time. I'll give you a taste. And he tried. He's like, oh, okay, fine. Let's have a chat about it. We then went on the next cocktail menu, and sort of 4 months later, we were the house coffee liqueur in 21 Jason Atherton venues across Australia and Dubai. So the liquid has that effect. But you asked, what did people say when we first took it out? I think it was so fortunate for us that when bars did take it, they didn't just put it on the back bar and let it get dusty. Like, I had very little cocktail knowledge when I started the business. I just shudder to think about the signature serves in our original recipes. I think vanilla vodka was in a few of them. But going to bars and they'd make like a flip, with an egg and Guatemala rum and Mr. Black and molasses and porter reduction. And I'd never had these drinks before. Tom, have you ever had a Negroni with coffee? Absolutely not. Let's try that. What about a old fashioned with a smoky Irish Scotch? Delicious, So the best thing was, we were just so inspired, by the creativity and flavor combinations that the trade did with the product, and then it's sort of the whole brand became really like a reflection of what people could make with it. So we had no idea at the start, and just thankfully bartenders are as creative as they are. I don't think 10 years earlier it wouldn't have worked. Mixology culture wasn't there, it just would have gone dusty, and 10 years later there's thousands of products out there. It was really like a great idea at exactly the right time in history for us, for sure.
And is that what you're seeing, like, as far as how it's become part of culture, is that it's really been through the bartender as opposed to more through marketing or anything like that? Because, like, I tried this and the first thing that was going through my head is, who can I give this? Who will enjoy this as much as I do? And so I'm really curious, usually it's kind of this groundswell the other way, but for me, this feels like this is going to be a bartender led kind of revolution.
We're lucky enough to have both, and often if you looked at most of, premium cocktail liqueurs, right? Like, most of them would start in the bar because they're the types of guys that are going to experiment, guys and girls are going to experiment with new weird modifiers to make new cocktails. Saint Germain, for instance, that type of thing, right? But the issue with some of those things is they don't really translate at home very well, because what am I meant to do with this new liqueur with 28 ingredients I've never heard of, right? But the good thing is we're coffee, so
right.
Love it, because now they've got this beautiful extra ingredient they can make nuanced, sophisticated, lovely coffee cocktails with that they couldn't do before. But then also you can grab a bottle, Jeff, and open it on a Friday night after, date night or when you got 20 mates over, and it tastes as delicious there as it does in the bar. So we're so lucky to have had both. And for the longest time, like our retail business and our bar business were always sort of neck and neck, and let's not turn it into a COVID thing, but what happened to the on-premise, in the US was tragic, and watch how best friends and bars and all that go through the struggles they have has been horrible to watch. But for the longest time in the US, it was always neck and neck with retail and bars, because it was we were in like thousands of cocktail menus in the lower 48, but then also like Total Wine was ranging the product everywhere. So like it's always, we're so fortunate to have both. I think that comes down to the coffee bit, it's everyone agrees on coffee. Well, 95% of people agree. The
John?
5% don't.
I mean, some people who say they like coffee really don't like coffee. And I think we all know who they are. You've been behind them at Starbucks when they ask for 20 pumps of 13 different syrups.
Or you drive by Dutch Brothers and it's lined up onto the street. Oh, God.
Yeah. That's the key
to
Dutch bros. Just keep driving by.
Right. So, and I was thinking about questions I would ask you, Tom, and and reading the website and the culture around coffee. I brew beer for a living, and we do this podcast, but there's only two things. I don't drink beer every day. I drink wine once a week. There's only two things I drink every single day: water and coffee. Every single day. It's a ritual for my wife and I. We wake up in the morning, we let the dogs out, we press the button on the burr grinder, and coffee's ready in 12 minutes. And from 5:15 in the morning until 6:10, it's me and the wife on the couch watching the sun come up and drinking coffee. And then to have this product is just really special. But you talked about earlier how it's more like you're in the wine business. And I think I understand why. And that's because coffee is an agricultural product.
An agribusiness, completely.
Which varies from, I would imagine I don't know what the coffee growing season is like. I don't know if it's continuous because you are in the tropics for the most part, but things still vary from harvest to harvest. So are you going through a blending process on a regular basis to keep obviously you have to, I would imagine, to keep the product consistent?
Completely.
And that would be the wine reference as far as blending and things.
Completely, yes. Coffee is an agribusiness. It's not a random brown seed that turns up in Starbucks. It is, the coffee is a fruit that grows on a tree between the tropics. You need a lot of altitude and a lot of rainfall to grow coffee. And it absolutely is an agribusiness. We are at the mercy of the weather, of climate change, of cultivation, of processing, much the same way that wines are. So absolutely, in our standard Mr. Black blend, we use 3 or 4 coffees depending on the time of year. We do, because we've been, for 8 years in Mr. Black now, we do have some good long-standing relationships with good, reliable suppliers, but, rainfall characteristics change coffee, supply constraints change how much we can get. There are some coffees that we just can't do without. So if we do need that, lovely, fruity, acidic, Ethiopian or Kenyan coffee, and we're not quite getting it from one coffee this year, we'll profile a bunch of others and we'll sub those in. So, it's absolutely not like we have a standard recipe and we stamp that out. We get massive variation in our coffees, and it's the job of our head of coffee and his team to manage that throughout the process. But the benefit of, 8 years and over 1 million bottles later is like we've got just such a remarkable amount of data about what, when, why, how, roast profiles, extraction time. We measure everything. I say a lot like we're at the decimal points of the company. It's not good by accident, right? You just have to be precise, and it's absolutely the challenge of the guys is to make a consistent, beautiful, delicious product, while dealing with the ebbs and flows of nature. We do also do other products, in limited releases like single origins and things like that showcase that variation, that showcase what one thing does. But yeah, the challenge of Mr. Black is making it taste as good as it does all year round.
So when is there a Cope Luwak version coming out?
It's sort of good that that's sort of falling out of the vernacular of the world, because it's sort of, it was sort of like when we started like 10 years ago, everyone's like, oh, that's like the best coffee you can get. And then, it sort of came to like the cruelty involved. It's now sort of falling out of the coffee vernacular, which is good. It's taken 2 decades to make people not think that coffee that's come out of the sphincter of a civet is good. But, we're getting there in time. Yes.
Everything eventually in time. Again, folks, we're talking to Mr. Tom Baker from Mr. Black. Mr. Black Cold Brew. You can find out more at mrblack.co or on Instagram at Mr. Black Spirits. It is available for purchase on Mr. Black CO in the US. Is that correct?
Yeah, you can buy it. It'll send you to another shop to buy it, but you can buy it in the US in almost all states.
Yeah. Jeff Solomon.
Yeah, Tom, I was thinking, as a guy who drinks a pot and a half of coffee every single day, what's the caffeine equivalent to one serving of Mr. Black in terms of compared to what folks are used to?
Short answer, long answer, then scientific answer. So short answer, like a quarter to a third, like an ounce of Mr. Black to like a cup of normal coffee. Longer answer is it has 1,100 milligrams per liter. The actual more interesting answer is caffeine in coffee is so interesting. It was sort of thought to be evolved as a way of warding off insects and animals from eating it. But actual caffeine in coffee varies incredibly, primarily with like seasonal, variation, but also roast profile as well. And the amount of caffeine in coffee varies wildly. I was reading a study which said you could grab a shot of espresso from one coffee shop and then grab a shot from the store next door, and one of those could have as much as 3 times the caffeine as another one. Cold brew, for instance, has a wild amount of caffeine in it, like a wild amount, and often when we do these, shows and, events and stuff, people were holding an ounce of Mr. Black. Like, is this going to keep me up all night? While I'm holding like a 24-ounce cup of like New York strength cold brew. I was like, hey, caffeine with a 7-hour half-life, that's going to be in your system on Tuesday, It sort of has got caffeine in it because it's made with real coffee, but it's just this thing. And you guys probably appreciate, how sometimes you have a coffee and you're like, that did nothing. And then other times, maybe the time you choose to get a double and you're like, my God, it just rewrites your brain. It's because if you happen to get a bigger one when the coffee happens to be a lighter roast of a more caffeinated coffee and maybe a cold brew, then you could be in a lot of trouble. So a quarter to a third, right? But
okay. While we're like really getting to the nitty gritty on the coffee front, I think now is the perfect time for me to tell you how to run your business. Do we have a stinger for that, Jeff Eccles?
No, I really need to get one.
How to run your business with Jeff. I like your stream, Sullivan. So Tom Baker of Mr. Black Cold Brew Coffee Liqueur. I see that this product is made with 100% Arabica beans. And yet, I know that we are in business a whole lot for the craft, and it's a beautiful craft. But I know you also want to make the money, right? And so I'm thinking about Folgers. I'm thinking about U-Band. I'm thinking about the good stuff. What do you have against Robusto?
I need to be more diplomatic with these answers, but
you don't have to be. This is the show where you can go.
All coffee is good. Coffee is a great thing, and I don't want to criticize nature. It is the whole invention of coffee is just a brilliant thing. But some coffees are just, empirically better than others. Robusta coffees tend to be used to make instant. They are a lot more bitter. They have a lot more caffeine in it, which is not actually what we want because we like to have a lot of coffee in ours without killing people. So, and they tend to, if you use them in increasingly large amount, make the product taste a bit rubbery and industrial. They're just practically cheaper. while some specialty coffee companies do think you can make really good Robusta or whatever, no, fuck that. It's a Arabica.
You're saying we're never going to see a Mr. Black single origin fair trade 100% Robusto?
I wouldn't count on it. Probably the decaf version will come out before that one.
Oh, wow.
Oh man. Oh.
And that's the thing. I say it as a joke, but people are like, oh, I really want that. And I was like, well, I've just said it as a joke for so long, I can't make it now. But yeah, it's a thing. Anyway.
My friend Karen is going to be very upset. She needs to speak to your manager about that.
Well, Tom, you can email him.
So Tom, we talked a little bit about the package, and it is just a beautiful package. And I know you put a lot. Did you put all of this together? Did you design this whole package?
I did the original couple. That one specifically, a whole was designed in New York. Can you believe it? By two friends of mine, Young Jerks, Dan Casaro and Dan Christopherson. Without exaggeration, like two of the best designer, typographers, illustrators on earth. They have a waiting list as long as your arm to get them to work on your brand. And I emailed them back in 2016 when we started, and I think they finally fit me in back in 2020 to get some work done. So,
okay.
All the original stuff I did, but now the company's a bit bigger. I have people far more talented than me to do jobs like this.
So I'm interested. I saw some videos of people with your product. It's quite prominent on here, but the eye. The eyeball that is there, the eyeball that you have a stamp that you can stamp ice with the eyeball so your drink is looking at you. What is the significance of the eye to the Mr. Black product?
The whole idea of the Mr. Black brand world is sort of coffee as a religion, because it is. It's the world's least exclusive cult, as we we're fanatics, about coffee. Our world revolves around it, from meeting at the coffee shop or at the espresso machine before we start work at the distillery to having one to finish the day. We're absolutely fanatical about it. And the idea of the Mr. Black brand world is, well, what happens if coffee was a religion and Mr. Black was the, the head of that church? So yeah, that's and also the I, caffeine. I don't know, wide awake. That's
wide awake.
I'm drinking with the Pope.
Yeah, exactly right.
Of the coffee cult.
So the truth is that the Illuminati funded.
Completely, yeah. We do get an occasional email to the sales inbox.
Dude.
Lots of capitals saying angles drawn on things. Yeah.
So are you going to help us get Jay-Z on the show then?
Okay. All right. One last question, and that was
afterwards.
One last question. Jeff already asked his. So John.
Well, there's a little bit of a zing in our drinks, and that's not just from the coffee. It's from the distillery that you have on site as well, and you're triple distilling or basically making grain vodka there. Is that correct?
Yeah. So we in the early days, we used to have to redistill it a lot more than we do. But again, the benefit of getting it bigger and being a high quality producer is we've worked with this one company on the south coast of Australia to really develop their beverage alcohol program. They're called Manildra. They're an amazing, very large, but still family-owned distillery in Australia. They supply the neutral grain alcohol to a lot of award-winning Australian distilleries. Us, Four Pillars Gin, really. And so now we are less reliant on distilling in-house. We obviously still do. We make lots of other products like Amari, which is distilled, and a few other things. But through a lot of work with a very patient partner, we've been able to get our neutral grain spirit without having to fully produce in-house. We still distill almost every day, making bits and bobs, but the actual grain alcohol for Mr. Black, we no longer need to do in-house, which is great, because, we're coffee guys. So we prefer to spend our time on stuff that adds flavor, not making something flavorless, which facilities are much better at.
Cool.
All right. Solomon?
But yeah, grain alcohol goes in at 96 and change, like absolutely the cleanest, most pure ethanol you can get, which is why it makes great cocktails, right? Because it's got this neutral grain base. It means the coffee shines. There's nothing to distract from that lovely coffee flavor. If we use rum or whiskey or whatever, you know, it just wouldn't make great drinks, right? Because it's got all those other flavor notes you're competing with.
Tom Baker of Mr. Black Cold Brew Coffee Liqueur. How do you take your coffee?
So I love cold brew, as you might expect, but here's the truth about Australians, right? Like, I'll level with you. While we say that we invented modern coffee and progressive coffee culture and all that romance, we're a very conservative coffee country. Like 98, I'm not exaggerating, 98% of coffee drunk in Australia is with milk by way of a flat white cappuccino, that type of thing. And I am in that 98%. So every morning starts with a cappuccino. You know, it's a very Italian way of drinking coffee. You know, it's milk coffee in the morning, black coffee in the afternoon. But yeah, very conservative coffee country. It's what I love about the US. I think why we've done so well there is, you know, you go into a Whole Foods and there's bays of cold brews with alt milks and coffee sodas and cold brew everything, you know, and that doesn't exist in Australia. You know, we have synthetic coffee, cheap stuff, because people go to their barista and get a cappuccino. Where in the US, it's just the innovation in the coffee space is brilliant. I think that's why we fit in so well over there, because so many people are making crazy new coffee stuff. But yes, cappuccino.
Nice. I just had this vision of, like, I don't know if y'all do TV commercials or not, but I just see one, like this little kid going, "Hey, mister, how do you take your coffee?" And you go, "I take it black." And then you'll
I would definitely drink more non-alc coffee than Mr. Black, but it's like neck and neck. You know, it's like Usain Bolt and then the guy that came second. You know, like just
way far behind.
No, like a meter.
Milliseconds. It's a very quick race, John.
Yeah, like a meter.
All right, and I guess I'll end the question with Tom Baker. Which in your life are you more proud of, Mr. Black or the Double Down Dog?
So, for those that don't know what a double, can I explain to people what a double down dog?
Please do.
So people might be like, "Tom, why did you leave a cushy agency job to start this?" I, used to get these briefs from KFC in like the Philippines or whatever, and great guys, but they'd be like, this is when extreme food was like becoming a thing, like when Instagram was invented, right, like 10 years ago. And all these companies like making increasingly obscure things to get Instagram likes because they used to be important. And so there was obviously the Double Down, which was it's a burger, but the bun was made of chicken.
Yep.
And then there were two contributions. The Double Down Dog was actually someone else. So but I was in the room when it was me, so it's mine. My contribution was the Chizza, right? Which is as you might imagine, is a chicken pizza, which is made of a piece of fried chicken, which is not, it's like a Parmesan. We have them in Australia. Anyway, a Chizza. And so people are like, "Tom, why did you leave your job?" Because, come on, bro. You can only sit there and invent things called a Chizza for so long before you're like, maybe I could actually do something that adds a little value to the world.
and I guess the final question, would Mr. Black cold brew coffee and the Chizza or the Double Down Dog be the ultimate food and drink pairing?
I think it's on the website. I think it's actually on the tasting where food pairing. We have one Chizza. No, I'm just kidding. Kind of sounds like a good Friday afternoon, though, doesn't it?
Yes, it does. It actually does.
Yeah.
That bloody Chizza. In fact,
the joke answer is Mountain Dew.
Uber Eats.
Awesome. Tom, thank you so much. That was so much fun. This product is lights out.
I love this. I'm going to impress all my wife's friends. They're going to be like, "This is the greatest thing ever," because it is.
It is.
You drink a lot of stuff, so that's high praise. Thank you very much.
But we have reached the time of the show where I get to call
Last call.
Last call.
Last call. Time to clean house and lock the doors. You know what we do here, folks. We're looking for a little bit of help from you. John Ruyak, if the folks want to follow us on the social media platforms, how can they do so?
Well, there's a couple of places to follow us on the social media platforms. That would be Twitter, Instagram, and the Tavern, which is kind of on Facebook, sort of. But Twitter, that's We Like Drinking 1, the numeral 1. Instagram is just We Like Drinking. And the Tavern, WeLikeDrinking.com/tavern. Invitation only, but we say yes to almost everybody.
We've never said no. So
I've said no to a couple people.
Tom Baker,
I don't talk about it.
Tom Baker, if the folks want to follow you guys on social media or visit your website, once again, where can they find those?
So it's mrblack.co. We couldn't afford the M when we started. So mrblack.co and at Mr. Black Spirits on Instagram, Facebook, Twitter.
All the things. Jeff Solomon, if the folks have some thoughts on the show or want to tell us how much they enjoyed their Mr. Black cold brew coffee liqueur, where can they go to leave a review?
There are so many places. There are so many things for all you watching live, as you ought to do every Tuesday night around 7:30-ish Pacific-ish. You're watching us on YouTube. Go ahead and leave a comment there. Go ahead and like and subscribe and flick that little bell so we pop into your feed more often. But those of you listening audio only, please go ahead, take a look at your podcast catcher app. It's probably Apple Podcasts. Fill up those 5 stars. Let us know what your go-to Mr. Black cocktail is, and let us know how you take your coffee.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Jeff. We'll read those next week if you go and do leave a review. If you've done all that,
I dare you. Come at me, bro.
If you've done all that and you're looking to do a little bit more, consider becoming a patron of the show by visiting WeLikeDrinking.com/pledge, where you can find out more about how you can leave us a little bit of the cash on a monthly basis to help us keep the show going. Big news on that front. We have added a new feature this month where if you don't want to give on a recurring basis, you can go and sign up for a yearly basis. So you can give us one lump sum, cancel out, and you're good for a one-time give. Again, visit WeLikeDrinking.com/pledge. You can also find the show notes for this episode with all the links to the stories or mentions we had at WeLikeDrinking.com/episodes.
So
this has been go ahead.
Sods. I was just punctuating that last part. Sorry, man. Sorry. I thought it was going to sound cool. Now it's just very awkward.
Okay. Yeah, a little bit of awkward silence there. Way to end the show, Jeff.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm a little scatterbrained from a third of a cup of coffee equivalent of caffeine right now.
You should.
By the way, I did get Kara bought this on accident. It's a beer infused with coffee. You know what kind of beer it is?
I would bet.
It's a nitro golden lager, coffee infused.
Nice.
I'm sorry, but those coffee beans look like a bunch of lips. I mean,
Yeah. You can kiss something, John.
Obviously, we've reached the time of the show where I get to say, okay, panel, let's take one last trip around this table and get some final thoughts before we shut off the light. John Ruyak.
right. So everybody knows we're opening up this. We purchased this big 10-barrel brewery, and we're starting, we're cleaning the place up. And the place that was in there before, the brewers were making a spicy pickle beer.
Ugh.
And spicy pickle sour. And we've been having, I'm just going to say it, a fuck of a time getting all of the spicy pickle spices out of the heat exchanger. I had James down. I had James down at the brewery, and he was back flushing and flushing 40 times today. And there's a point to this. 40 times today, and he was still getting pickle spice and black peppercorns and caraway seeds and all kinds of shit coming out of the heat exchanger. So we came up with a vernacular that applies to the beginning of this show on normal weeks. So when Jeff Solomon's late, we're just going to say, hey, he's making some pickle beer.
That's very cute. It actually sounds like a delicious dilemma.
No.
Jeff Solomon.
I'll tell you what. I got all this coffee in front of me. Kara got this gigantic thing of Starbucks French roast, which, by the way, I mean, I'll drink it. The problem is, you know, the story about French roast is, you know, it was actually originally Robusto beans that you like cook the shit out of it, so you didn't have to worry about the flavor. I've got this delicious like Verve coffee roasters street level. These guys are out of Santa Cruz, California, and I grew up around this. They're on
the real deal, yeah.
Yeah, they're on Bronson Street where Santa Cruz skateboards are made too. But look at these like beautiful green, like almost green beans, like that light roast there. That's wonderful. But here's the thing. Kara picked up this Phil's coffee. Y'all ever heard of Phil's out of San Francisco?
Yeah.
It's like this weird thing. Like people like you mentioned Phil's, and people go, "Oh, Phil's is the best." It's one of those things that you're like, I'm like, all right, Kara, go ahead and get the Phil's. I opened up the Phil's this morning, and I just love smelling like a freshly opened bag. And I'm like, I can see the deep roast, like, which I'm kind of like, it's pretty like roasted a little bit more than I'm stoked on. But then on top of it, I'm like, there's something different. Like there's an aroma there that is just not typical of what I'm into. I'm like, is this a flavored coffee? And I'm looking all over the bag and I don't see anything about like it being a flavored coffee. I start drinking it and I'm like, I don't know, it's smooth. It's different. It's like weird. And then finally, like, look, underneath like the weight, like, do you see how small the font is right there?
Yeah.
Artificial hazelnut flavoring. And like the thing is like, look, if you like hazelnut coffee, that's on you. But when I buy a bag, I should know from 10 feet away whether or not it's hazelnut coffee. So fuck you, Phil's. I am not giving you a second chance. You ruined my day.
I know people like Phil's, and someone took me there when I was in San Francisco. I know it's a thing, and I don't want to offend anyone, but they ordered me this drink. It was like a coffee and it had like mint and like other things in it, and it was dreadful. It was just the worst thing I've ever been served. But I was polite and pretended it was nice because I was going out for coffee. But my God, who puts mint in coffee?
Yeah. Hashtag fill your trash can. That's what you can do with that coffee.
Tom, any final thoughts before we let you get out of here?
Gents, I just want to say thank you very much for having me on the show. It's been a real pleasure to have the opportunity to share what we make and talk about our little coffee roastery and distillery down in Australia. It's like it legitimately like 7.5, almost 8 years ago, it was me and another guy, you know, and we made our in like April 2013. And now we're in, 16 countries and 16 states in the US and 8,000 bars and restaurants and liquor stores in the United States. And I'm on the podcast with 4 Booze Guys. So it's been an amazing journey. So I really appreciate the opportunity to come on and tell our story and to me, guys. It's been a pleasure.
Yeah. You have reached your pinnacle in your career today. How many people are working for you now?
Depends on how you count them, but like somewhere between 20 to 45. So.
Wow. That's amazing.
And you're like the boss of all of them. I've just got a Monday memo idea. It's, hey, everybody, subscribe to the We Like Drinking podcast.
I'll put it in the Slack group.
And Tom, once again, thank you for getting this product to us. I'm glad I can get it within an hour of me because this isn't going to last very long. I gotta say, when I was like, I had that mentality. I think when I first thought about it, I'm like, oh, a coffee liqueur, and I'm so glad we brought you on because this is just a magical treat for my face hole and everybody else. And if you're out there, I highly, highly, highly suggest you seek this stuff out because it will change your drinking habits. Bottom line. So thank you for creating this. Thank you for getting away from cheese, chicken, hot dog pizzas and into this nectar of the gods from Australia. There's a great product. You are a fantastic guest, and thank you so much for joining us.
Appreciate it, guys. Thanks very much.
And with that, I'll say thanks again for joining us at the We Like Drinking podcast, where you'll never drink alone. Awesome.
Hey,
I went too quick on this then. I was too quick on
It was Australian. There's no holding back. It's quick punches when you get into a scuff.
Have you guys seen the commercial for the quesalupa?
Yes.
Oh,
What the fuck? Taco Bell has a chalupa wrapped in a quesadilla,
Yeah.
but they got rid of the Mexican pizza. That was too extreme. Taco Bell needs to get their shit together.
Sounds like
them and Phil. They probably pour Phil's coffee over there.
Exclusively with Phil's.
There must be some lamb in it because there's mint sauce.
Folks watching on YouTube, thank you guys so much. Like for real, we have a lot of products on every now and then. This is a product.
This is the real deal, folks. Thank you so much, Tom, for getting this to us. Wow.
This is a product. If you like coffee, this is a product you need to seek out. This is
world-class stuff.
Fucking amazing stuff. So YouTubers, we'll see you next week. I don't even know. I have no idea what we're doing next week.
Hey, it's my week off next week. So after party, maybe.
After party next week sounds good. YouTube, we'll see you all next week. Thanks everybody for joining.